welcome to the show, Sam Seder. Kia ora, Sam. Good morning, New Zealand time.
Thanks, Pat. It's the late afternoon here, but I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Just thought, actually, speaking to an American, I said kia ora. Kia ora is hello, welcome in the Māori language here in New Zealand. It's, I guess, one of the differences between New Zealand and a lot of other kind of Western colonized countries is we intersperse quite a lot of our indigenous language in and around English. It's sort of it's kind of the New Zealand version of Spanglish, I guess. It's sort of in and amongst. I guess actually, like probably here in places in America, you know, a lot of Latino, a lot of Spanish being spoken, but not indigenous American. Yeah. Anyway,
and not integrated in the same spirit, I would imagine, particularly in these days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not. I mean, you know, it's a strange thing here in New Zealand that we are probably done better than most countries in the world with the indigenous population, but we've still got a long way to go. So to say that we're kind of world leading is a pretty shitty thing to say when you see how much bullshit there is still going on.
Right.
Hey, listen, I wanted to talk to you about Zoran and perhaps Democrats' fold, but just today, of course, as I wake up, it's breaking news. We hear that the worst kept secret in the world, the most expected headline there has ever been, even here in New Zealand, this is our public broadcaster, Radio New Zealand, is saying that the Epstein emails have come out saying Trump knew about the girls, like nobody's surprised. I'm sure you guys have covered off on that sort of today. What's your thoughts around it?
We did. Well, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure. As you probably know, our government shutdown actually, within this hour, there's supposed to be a vote to end the government shutdown and also to swear in a Democratic congressperson who was elected, I think, almost 50 days ago now.
I think I heard 11 weeks, I think. 11 weeks ago?
No, I think it was 51 days, but it could be 11 weeks. Nevertheless, the longest time in between someone winning an election and getting sworn in. And Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, has been holding off on this because she will represent the 218th vote. There are 4 Republican defections who will sign a discharge petition. Without going too far into the weeds, what it basically means is that despite the wishes of the Speaker of the House, the bill has to get to the floor and get a vote if there is a discharge petition. And so that will get to the floor, and it is expected, the legislation, it'll take like a week or two, I think, because of the intricacies of the discharge petition, but it is expected to pass. And then once the House passes a law that says you got to release all the Epstein files that the Department of Justice has, it would go to the Senate. And the Senate doesn't have to take up the bill. It could just die. But this is going to add pressure because if you've read those email exchanges, there were 3, at least, that specifically mentioned Trump that we have seen so far. There's a whole dump of these emails, and there's actually some pretty interesting stuff. I haven't dug through it too much, but I'm seeing some other interesting stuff in there. But one is an email between between Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein from 2011. Mm-hmm. And Epstein says, Trump is the dog that didn't bark. And, he knew, and he says specifically, he knew blank, it was redacted, the name of the victim. He spent time with her at my house or at his house. I can't remember exactly, but it's quite clear that Epstein is like, Trump isn't speaking out of turn here. And Ghislaine Maxwell says, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Then there was a subsequent email between the writer Michael Wolff and Epstein in 2015. And that was on the day of a presidential debate. And Michael Wolff said that I hear CNN is going to ask Trump about you.
Or in the scrum afterwards, I think it said. So either
Yes.
on stage or in the scrum.
No,
afterwards.
I think it was either in an interview or a scrum. Like they were going to, not necessarily in the debate, I don't think was the implication. And Epstein basically said something to the effect of like, well, if you could fashion an answer for him, what would it be?
Yeah.
Which is, you could read it as like just a total thought experiment, or that Epstein had a way to get a response to Trump. And Wolff went through the different versions of what potentially Trump could say. And the political, what did he call it? Political currency it would lend, or debt that it would provide for Epstein. So he suggested that in the future, Epstein could basically vindicate or exculpate Trump, and that would provide some political debt, et cetera, et cetera. So it really, it suggests that there was a sort of almost, I don't know, I would call it a blackmail dynamic, but like you can scratch his back and he'll scratch your back, which implies that there was some back scratching that needed to happen for Epstein. And I suspect that was, this is 2015. Just to remind people, in the early mid-aughts, Epstein faced charges in Florida, and the attorney general at that time, or working in that office, was a guy named Alex Acosta, who made a sweetheart deal with Epstein that, and was on record as saying since then that like he was told that Epstein was an intelligence asset and to lay off of him. So he made a sweetheart deal for him. This same guy, Alex Acosta, in 2016, after Trump won, really, I guess 2017 was when he started to serve, was named labor secretary by Donald Trump. So served in the Trump administration. So that 2015 exchange between Wolff and Epstein has some salience. And then in 2019, in January of 2019, this is like 6 or 7 months before Epstein gets arrested and supposedly commits suicide in jail. He also referenced Trump, and that one I can't remember now exactly what was said. Maybe you have it in front of you, but that was also in a conversation between Wolff and Epstein, again alluding to the fact that it had to do with Trump answering a question about Epstein, and Epstein saying, I was never a member of his, he never fired me from the club, or I should say kicked me out of the club. This is what it was. He said, he never kicked me out of the club. I was never a member there. He did, and some of this is redacted, he did tell Ghislaine Maxwell to stop with the girls.
But he had to think, he came back and he said something about he took one of the girls, but it was an employment issue. He took her from the job. Yeah.
Trump had said that he was poaching workers, but
yeah,
the way that Epstein phrased it, it implied that Trump knew there was something ongoing about the girls.
Yeah.
That Trump, didn't want. Now he's referring to years earlier, probably 10, 15 years earlier at that point as to when that conversation happened. But look, it clearly reads as Donald Trump knew a lot more than he has led on.
Yeah.
And this is going to create pressure on Republicans, at least theoretically. I mean, look, much of his following is like this creepy authoritarian followers, but there have been some fractures in the conservative movement, particularly in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination,
Yeah.
and largely around both Israel as a sort of first or second order issue, and also around full on sort of crypto neo-Nazi in the sort of conservative movement, and whether they should be allowed to be in the movement or not.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching. Like, it's always interesting to see what breaks the rule, and like Israel seems to have broken all the rules that the conservatives, that the right wingers have put up forevermore. Israel is the thing that broke the free speech rule, because all of a sudden a whole bunch of these free speech warriors were like, "But we shouldn't be saying that."
Right.
Israel seems to be the thing that's broken the, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, broken the loyalty no matter what to Trump rule. And it's fascinating that that conflict that's gone on in Israel and the genocide in Gaza is the one thing. I mean, Trump famously said, I could shoot someone in Manhattan and wouldn't lose a vote. But Israel is the same. It's same here in New Zealand. Like a lot of our kind of right-wing online, quote unquote, pundits, who are like these guys who call them free speech purists, then are also saying, oh, this should be regulated. This speech should be regulated because it's saying that you shouldn't shop at these real harmless stuff. So it's been fascinating to watch Israel be the thing to break all these rules that the conservatives generally have set up for the left, but now won't apply to themselves around Israel. And it seems to be similar in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I also think that there's other things that break the rules too, frankly. I mean, at the end of the day, like the idea that Zoran Mamdani is a Muslim all of a sudden is problematic. I mean, look, at the end of the day, many of these people are Christian nationalists, and it's just a question of how far down the natural destination that their ideology leads do they feel comfortable expressing in public. And it's moved further and further to the right. And I would say Marjorie Taylor Greene did not may have broken with Trump over Israel, but it really was Trump telling her not to get into the Georgia Senate race.
Yeah.
And then Marjorie Greene decided, okay, this is not the path forward for me. And now she has become sort of like, just in the span of like 4 months, a contrarian of sorts within the Republican Party. It's sort of fascinating. I don't think it's terribly sincere, but it is what it is.
So you would put her current position, outburst against Trump, to the Senate seat rather than to the Epstein files? Because she does seem to be one of those people on the right who has gone, no, these files have to be released. Are you suggesting
had
that's
Donald
more
Trump
of a
said
reaction?
to her, yes, had Donald Trump said to her,
The Senate.
I'm backing you
Okay.
for the Georgia Senate race, I have a feeling we would see a radically different Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You've brought up in this conversation already the shutdown. I guess in the last 48 hours, there are numerous commentators who are using the phrase folded like a cheap suit, making the previous 40 days pointless. How are you reading it from your end as to what's happening with the shutdown, especially because the Republicans have basically said, oh, no, we'll have the conversation around taking their healthcare away after you pass it. Don't know why people have believed that. I mean, John Fetterman's obviously in there, but since his stroke, he seems to have become a Republican, certainly in position. But what's the response from your side, from your end in America, to them folding and raising that debt ceiling?
Well, it's not raising the debt ceiling. It's continuing resolution to extend the budget as it is now, I think until only January 10th. And then they'll do this again. I don't think it was for nothing, because they managed to get the issue of it was really, I mean, look, I'm not a huge fan of this part of the Affordable Care Act, but it's subsidizing private insurance. I would rather, obviously, our government provide health insurance, which may sound like obvious to any of your listeners or viewers, I should say. But we subsidized during COVID. The government extended the pool of people who would receive subsidies. These are people who do not get their health insurance through work and get it on the ACA exchanges. So you're talking about, maybe 10 million people. And it increased the subsidies for people moving up, I think topping out at 400% above poverty line. And these were not, they had an expiration date largely because of Joe Manchin during the Biden administration foiled the plan to make them permanent. It has drawn attention to the fact that the insurance rates are going to go sky high. And both because the cuts from the signature piece of legislation the Republicans passed several months ago, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, throws people off of health insurance, Medicaid. And because of the anticipation of the rollback of the subsidies, the risk pools that are in these insurance, that the insurance companies cover, become basically sicker. And so they've got to raise rates. So rates are going up and subsidies are disappearing. Yeah. So for some people, they're going to be paying literally 114% more than double their insurance rates on a monthly basis. And it's quite clear now, at the very least, that this is going to be attributed to Republicans because of the shutdown. That's the only way that was communicated, in my opinion. The shutdown, so as a political matter, I think it was helpful. We'll see how helpful in a year from now. But in terms of a material matter, it was a complete waste. We're not going to get those subsidies increased at all. We're not going to get assurances that Trump is going to follow what the budget says. I mean, that's the big problem, is that he has been basically breaking the law and unilaterally deciding he is not going to fulfill the appropriation of Congress for any given agency or whatnot. And he's shifting money around. So in that respect, Chuck Schumer failed to lead the caucus. And I think, frankly, orchestrated in a sort of hands-off approach the end of the shutdown. And mind you, not only was it going well as a political matter, Trump was at his lowest approval rating in the history of him as president, not just this term, but in the history of him as president. And Republicans were being blamed for the shutdown. But the Democrats just won a week ago yesterday. It's an off year election. So it's not even the non-presidential election. But nevertheless, I don't recall, and I've been doing this professionally now for over 20 years, an election where Democrats won every race that they were supposed to, and many, many races that people thought, no way. The Republicans literally won nothing short of like places where they were expected to win by 15 points.
Yeah.
And so you're talking literally peak leverage. Couldn't have been more leverage. But I think a lot of it was to protect the filibuster, because Trump wasn't going to capitulate. The Republicans, they listened to Trump, and he was pushing for them to get rid of the filibuster, which they've done on at least 2 or 3 other occasions to get stuff through, smaller stuff. If they had gotten rid of the filibuster in this instance, Democrats would have been obligated to also ignore the filibuster. And then all of these politicians would have to be accountable for their votes in a way that a filibuster sort of prevents you from having direct accountability, right? So I can say, I'm voting for this measure, but we don't have 60 votes, so it's going to fail, and it doesn't actually happen. That's a free vote for you. Without a filibuster, folks actually have to be accountable for how they're going to vote.
It's a bit off topic, but I was just thinking as you were speaking, hearing the filibuster, and I'm thinking about your election system and how, North Carolina will have this many congressmen and California will have this many, and the disproportionate representation. It sounds really weird, but when I speak often to more so conservative Americans, they go, "We're the greatest country in the world." And my response to that is normally just, what's the metric you use to measure that? I'm not challenging the same, but what's the metric you use to say that? Because I reckon if someone wrote a novel today and the novel was based on the rules and the society that America provides, I wonder if it would be very believable. Like, I'm thinking about the filibuster. I'm thinking about what happens with guns over there. I'm thinking about, how you elect your president. I'm thinking about health. Shit, bro. We read an email out from someone the other day where someone says they pay $24,000 a year for their health insurance in America. I have health insurance, but that's because I choose to. I pay about $150 a month. I've never used it, because we have a free public health system here. And in New Zealand, it's not perfect. People with cancer sometimes take longer to get it than if they could afford to pay for it, but they get it. And if it's an emergency, you're straight in there and there's no bill, and we don't pay to have babies. And honestly, I was just thinking, literally, as I sit here, I wonder if someone wrote this dystopian novel and it had all the rules within American society, if it would be a believable novel. Like if they'd written that 100 years ago, or if it'd be like, nah, you're never going to see a country like that. That makes no sense.
Well, is it fiction? If it was a fiction, like a science fiction dystopic, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are just, absolutely nuts. I mean, and frankly, a lot of it has to do with the tremendous wealth disparity we have and the outsized power that money has in our society. And, the Senate in our Constitution originally, the House is more representative, right? Because it is a specific window of people that you represent. Theoretically, there should be a lot more House members, right? It grew over time, but stopped growing about 110 years ago.
Oh, real?
And our population has added 150 million people, 250 million people since then.
Yeah.
And so we're stuck at 435. The Senate was originally voted on by state lawmakers. There wasn't even a direct vote for the Senate. And then we had a constitutional amendment that allowed for direct voting of the Senate. But there are 2 senators from California, tens of millions of people represented by 2 people, and 2 senators from, pick a small state, Wyoming, which I think has like 700,000 people. And they have equal weight as to Wyoming has 2 votes. California has 2 votes. That's completely messed up. The filibuster is not even statutory. The filibuster is just like a tradition that is there, again, to make sure that the Senate really doesn't do anything. And it's been used by the right far more than the nominal left in this country, because, cutting taxes is really basically their policy, and they don't have anything after that.
Yeah, look, it's very clear to me, especially here in New Zealand, that the left make policy and the right respond to policy. And I think that's pretty clear. Our right here has nothing original. In fact, they are literally going back to stuff that has been done and failed in the past before. I just want to say as well, because I just realized what I just said about your beloved country. No offense intended. I was just thinking out loud. It was about what I just said about, the American novel. I know it's the country you live in and born in and given you what you've given. So no offense intended. However, I do think as well, it's probably a time we could quickly talk about Zoran Mamdani, because maybe the philosophies and ideologies of people like him would be the counter to what I just said about the dystopian novel. And you're in New York. Has the party stopped yet?
I mean, people are really excited, and it was very much needed, in terms of like hope. People are excited, but there's, the country is going through a particularly bad time, and there's, I think, also a knowledge that Trump's federal paramilitary force. I really don't know how to really describe it. Brown shirts, thugs, Gestapo-like tactics, under the guise of ICE, which is immigration enforcement. They're maybe people have seen the videos coming out of Chicago as of late. There's been other places around the country, but they are like beating up people. They're tear gassing people. The community in Chicago has been great in responding, but there's a real strong sense that he's going to do this in New York. And so I think I think people realize like there's celebration, but it really is more like this is an opportunity to get some stuff done and to do some work and to have it mean something. And so there's more of a sense of, I think, like people are like, okay, let's get ready. Man, it's almost like, the flood is coming, and finally a truck shows up with sand in bags, and now people are getting ready for it. And people were pretty excited that truck made it, but and now we got work to do. And but it's inspiring, I think, like other candidacies around the country. It comes at a time when there's been this sort of fight within the Democratic Party as to like, what is the way forward? And Mamdani, it's New York. It's not, it's not Iowa, but there's a real sense that Mamdani was able to motivate young people in a way that hasn't been motivated before in New York. Was able to make to form a very broad coalition against the guy who had, largely unlimited resources. Albeit wasn't, was sort of a disgraced guy. But if you had asked me a year ago, do I think Andrew Cuomo is going to be the next mayor of New York? I would have, sadly said probably yes.
Yeah, right.
But so there's a lot of inspiration that's being taken from this. But I also think there's like, people understand this is, there's not too much time to celebrate. We've got to get to work, and you take this opportunity.
Does your gut tell you the Dems will follow his example or across the country, or will the Dems reject it?
I think it's going to be a fight. I think it's going to be a fight. There's a candidate up in Maine who has gotten a lot of, who announced his candidacy in August. He is not the pick of the Democratic establishment. And I know that his campaign was, at least to some extent, inspired by Mamdani's win in the primary. And the excitement around him is sort of like bound up in Mamdani's success. And I think we're seeing at the very least, what is happening is that there's a sense that the Democrats need a new generation of leadership. And there's two elements to it, right? Like Mamdani represents not just new leadership, but a new, more working class oriented ideology, where the idea of the metric of a successful society or city or whatnot is not, whether a prince comes to the United States to get healthcare from a foreign country, but rather whether the most amount of people in the country, all the people, get good healthcare. And sort of like rather than sort of saying like, Sam and Bill Gates go into a room and like they're very, very wealthy. The idea is that we have two people with closer, a little bit less wealth disparity in that instance, and on a broad base. And there's that ideological turn, which I think was some of us in a decent amount in the Democratic Party, but certainly, not the majority, are pushing for. But what is really clear is that there's a much broader acceptance of the idea that like Democrats have to be more partisan, that they need to be aware of who the Republican Party is and respond accordingly. You know, the leadership of the Democratic Party, and I don't want to say it's just about age, but it's certainly about an older perspective, an aged perspective on what politics are like. They're just not meeting the moment. They just do not seem to track the threat that Donald Trump represents and that the Republican Party represents to, at this point, to democracy, you know, to the extent that we have it in this country. 6 months ago, if you'd said to me, do you think there's going to be elections in 2026 and in 2028, and it's going to go, you know, it's going to be largely a function of like politics as normal on those elections, I would have said, yeah, probably. But increasingly, I think that is really in danger. I think we are really on the precipice, and Democrats have to function in a partisan manner and one that recognizes the sort of, you know, read the room essentially. Yeah. And so I think that's happening more. And I think that's going to, you know, hopefully set up an opportunity to have this sort of ideological fight and continue to move the Democratic Party to the left.
Hey, Sam, we've hit that 30-minute mark because it's flown by. You've got time for one more quick question?
Sure, of course.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to ask you was more about the online media in America that you're a part of. It seems for a long time the right had dominated that space, but it does feel like there's a movement at the moment that the left is coming up. I find right and left a bit arbitrary, but we know what we're saying. With like, you know, the Joe Rogans and the Tim Pauls and the Dave Rubins sort of starting to come down a bit, and like, you know, yourself and the Kyle Kalinskis and the breaking points, well, half of the breaking points starting to rise. Is there a feeling within your kind of online community that this is a bit of an era for the left, or are we not seeing it over here? Is this because it's my ecosystem and I'm only seeing you guys, or is there an upswing in America?
I mean, certainly, I think I know that my viewership has increased. And I think that's like, there's a certain ebb and flow to this, right? Like when you're in the opposition, particularly, you know, against Donald Trump, people get more, you know, attuned to politics and, you know, become more invested in it. I still think like the right has an advantage. There's just a lot more money behind them than on the left. And, you know, I don't know how that's corrected because, you know, it's hard for me to think of the scenario where I would take the money if it was offered to me by, you know,
Peter Thiel.
Well, but I would never take it from Peter Thiel. But even if there was like, you know, a Democratic a think tank, or, you know, a Democratic version of the Heritage Foundation, or a Democratic version of Peter Thiel, I am less inclined to take that money probably than they would on the right.
But we just saw that, didn't we? Because there was that whole situation with $8,000 a month, and Brian Tyler Cohen and David Pakman were caught up in that. Isn't that basically what you're saying? You'd struggle to find a reason to take that kind of money?
I would. I mean, I found that whole thing. I mean, look, I am happy that there is money going into building out a, you know, even if it's just like sort of Democratic, normie Democrat, you know, influencers or talkers or whatever it is. I'm happy that there are resources available because it's needed. I think that enterprise did it in a very stupid way. And certainly, like, you know, for some people, you know, it was the only way that they were going to survive. But, you know, I think they should have, if they needed that money, they should have made it clear to their audience that they were taking that money so that it doesn't harm their credibility. I think the whole enterprise with those was really stupid. And, you know, if I had that kind of money, I would have done it in a very, very different way.
Gotcha.
One that would have like actually built out, their audiences. I would say instead of $8,000 a month, I would say to them, I'm going to spend $5,000 a month on advertising your show on whatever platform you think is best, you want to grow in. And
Yeah,
I will
interesting.
help you grow. And then I will take the other $3,000 a month that I was going to give you, and I'm going to create an infrastructure to help you. So you use clips. Well, I'm going to send out an email every day, and it's going to have 20 clips, and you'll be able to just pull them, and it's going to save you time. I mean, that's the way I would have done it.
Nice.
The way that it was done, I thought was just garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, look, Sam, we'll leave it there because, as we said, you've given us more time than we talked about, which I appreciate. Thank you so much for giving us some time today. If people want to find out more about what you're doing and what you're up to, of course, Majority Report. But it's funny, outside of America, we know everything that's going on over there. It's not often reciprocal. So my audience knows you. All very excited last night when they heard that you were coming on today. So thanks for allowing me to do a bit of clout chasing off the back of your work. I appreciate it.
Well, no, I appreciate it, Pat. It's always fun to talk to you. And, I think I told you before, I spent 9 months hitching around Australia. Almost 40 years ago now.
Dude.
But I've always wanted to get back. I've always wanted to get to New Zealand. So it's fun for me just to zoom in, as it were. So always a pleasure. Thanks, Pat.
Well, just anytime you want to come by, we have a spare bedroom. There's a bed upstairs.
I may take you up on that one day. You may just get a knock on your door.
I'm based in Otago, and Otago's 3 hours away from Queenstown, which is sort of one of the most beautiful places in the world. So, if you need a hookup for coming over here, shout out.
It may take me a couple of years until I start to cut back a little bit, but I may have to borrow your studio if I'm still doing the show a little bit.
Yeah, down 100%. I'll even take the Dunedin sign down off the back wall there. It's all good.
All right, wonderful. All right, thanks, Pat.